Oi, James, we're here. Right. The floor is yours, David.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. And I trust that we'll get a bit more than the allotted 5 minutes since we've arrived in time in your fleet.
Be careful what you wish for.
Yes, thank you. Welcome the questions. We welcome the opportunity to be with you again. We believe that local government is hugely important in the lives of ordinary people. And we believe that the City Council sells itself short in that it doesn't tell people, remind people what it's doing. Instead of talking about rates as being a burden, the City Council ought to be telling the people that rates are the best value in town. If you look at the range of services, basic services and other recreational services which the council provides, it's extraordinarily good value for money. And the council should be saying that rather than apologising for a rates increase which is incredibly modest. I see that farmers are going to be paying another 60 cents on average per week. And the ordinary rate payer, $3.50. The business rate payer, $18 a week. These extras are very, very minor increases when you consider the cost of, say, the internet or the cost of a coffee. So we believe the council ought to be telling the people more about what the council is doing. You've got a great scheme over there in Littleton to take the sewage out of Littleton Harbour, but we hear very little about that. We don't get progress reports. Down on the way to New Brighton, there are great big excavations going on, which I'm sure the Mayor knows lots about. But even though I'm a reasonably well-informed citizen, I don't really know what is going on there. People need to be told. And I think there's an over-reliance on social media. There's a wealth of information available on the council's website, but you've got to go and look for it. And most people aren't particularly motivated. So we believe the council is selling itself short in that way. Congratulations on keeping the uniform charge low. It's an equity issue because capital value rating is undoubtedly a fundamentally fair system. And the publicity recently in the newspapers about the accumulated wealth of the top 1% of New Zealand, the 311 families or whatever, is a reminder that the only way in which we are taxing accumulated wealth these days is really through the rates, which is why some business people don't like paying rates. There are two issues in particular that we want to talk to you about. The first is our hardy annual of housing. Our Labour Electorate Committee has been coming to you year after year to plead with the council to be more proactive in housing. 10 years ago, was it 10 years ago, 12 years ago, whatever it was, the council decided it would hand over its responsibilities to the Ōtautahi Trust. That is a model which could have worked, but the council has not resourced the trust. The trust's got very minimal resources, and the result of that is that the City Council and the trust have fewer rental houses now than they had in 2010. In other words, you still haven't caught up with the backlog from the earthquakes. And I think that is a disgrace. I'm sure you think it is too, if you like to think about it. But by delegating it to the Ōtautahi Trust, you have shelved responsibility. And there's nothing more important than housing. One of the problems with delegating the authority in that way is that you are no longer in touch with need. If, like some of us, you're involved in trying to find homes for the homeless, it is very, very difficult. The council rightly supports Housing First, which is a great organisation. But Housing First can only find houses for people if those houses are available. There's an absolute shortage of single-room accommodation, especially over in the east. To try and find accommodation for homeless people is very difficult because respectable landlords, understandably, they want references from previous tenancies. They want good character references. Have you ever been evicted? If you've got a prison record and probably on drugs, it's very, very difficult. So there's a need for an increase in the stock, housing stock, especially a single bedroom accommodation. The other problem with the model, the income-related rents model, under which Otahi Trust operates, is that it all goes through work and income. It's work and income that really allocates the tenancies. And the effect of having a shortage of accommodation and everything going through work and income means that the demographic in the council housing has changed. There is a very large proportion of high needs people concentrated in these complexes. If you have half a dozen high needs people in a complex of 30 people, then you'll find that those half dozen people conform to the culture within that complex. If you have a majority of high needs people in these complexes, then what happens is that they establish the culture. And that can have great difficulties. The proportion of high needs people in some of these complexes is very considerable. And neither the council nor Otahi are supported in the way that they need to be to provide for their needs. You've only got to walk around some of these complexes to see that a lot of the tenants are not coping. And we deinstitutionalised our mental hospitals and so on a number of years ago. It's great. It's called community care, but so often it's community neglect. So we really think that the council ought to be lobbying government for funding to support high needs people in social housing.
Thank you, David. How are you getting on there, mate? How much longer do you think you've got?
Oh, another 5 minutes?
Oh, no. Because our next customer is right behind you.
I thought I wasn't due to 11:15, Your Worship.
Yeah, but you've had well over 5 minutes. But if you want to wrap it up,
the other thing we wish to draw attention to is the council's management of Christchurch City Holdings and the companies. We all know that there have been some problems recently, and we think this stems from the council allowing a sort of standard corporate culture to develop in City Holdings and in the companies which City Holdings holds on behalf of the citizens of Christchurch and the council. There's a view which is promulgated by the Institute of Directors that the only people who are fit to sit on as directors of companies are people who've sat on boards of other companies, so-called professional directors. I've sat on boards alongside professional directors, and some of them are very, very good. And some of them are mediocre, to put it mildly. They're seat warmers. The councils need to realise that you become experts in the management of utilities and infrastructure. When you're first elected, you've got a lot to learn. When you've been here for 2 or 3 years, you understand the principles of managing infrastructure, which in effect is a matter of managing your long-term investment and your maintenance. You become experts and are far more qualified than the average professional director to sit on boards of directors dealing with infrastructure and utilities. So we really think it's important that the council should have a majority of directors on City Holdings, and preferably, I would think the chairman of City Holdings ought to be a city councillor, because after all, City Holdings is 100% owned. So we really think that needs attention. It means bucking the trend that is fashion, which is promulgated by the Institute of Directors, who I might say are a very self-interested group. I'm not against professional directors. Some of them are very, very good, as I said. But to allow that corporate culture to develop, I think, leads to all sorts of problems, and I don't need to tell you what they are.
Thank you very much, David. That's very enlightening.
Okay.
Thanks for coming in. Good on you.
Thank you.
So
I'm giving you
Dominic?
10